So in the Jiangsu province, which is located adjacent to Shanghai as a city, there's a vast amount of theme parks that I think people should be able to visit relatively easy if they go to Shanghai. So I think it's very tourist friendly. And all of these parks have a major e-ticket coaster I think is worth visiting. You've got Star Sky Ripper, you've got Jungle Dragon, you've got Fighter Jet, Forest Predator, you've got Falcon,
Wings of Glory,
Beyond the Cloud, and Dinoconda. Wings of Glory, but Dinoconda.
Our beloved SNS 4D coaster. Do you know they still sell them? In theory, every time when we go to IAAPA,
yeah, didn't they tell us that during IAAPA?
Like, hey, would you still sell one of these? And we asked. I was talking to SNS again this past IAAPA. And they were like, yeah, we still sell them. There was a common misconception that like the product line had been like ended, but really they can't find clients. I hope another one gets sold. Maybe if there was a marketplace, I bet we would have the same answer to this question. So I'm going to actually pose it as a question, but like what marketplace do you think would support a 4D coaster, like the next generation of Dinoconda?
Oh, let me think. I feel like there's so many parks that would benefit.
I think there's one answer that's really obvious.
Which one is it?
The Middle East.
Okay.
Like Six Flags, Saudi Arabia, or some park in the United Arab Emirates seem like the obvious place.
I feel like Six Flags Great Adventure could really benefit from one. I feel like an East Coast X2 could really work.
Great Adventure. I mean,
especially
they're getting something apparently very outlandish, replacing King Ka. So,
which by the time you're listening to this, this may already be news. We're actually pre-recording this episode, so it may already be news about this. Hey, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you're listening to another episode of Coaster Kings. And today's episode is about Jiangsu province and some of the theme parks we just recently visited. We just came back from a little Lunar New Year trip. So this may be launched a few weeks, if not months, after we went. So if there's any information in this episode that is somehow outdated, we do apologize in advance, but most of this doesn't seem very time sensitive. So we're recording this just after visiting for the upcoming season, which you're now listening to. So today we're going to talk about 3 of the parks we visited. We did a 9-day trip to Shanghai and Jiangsu just for the Lunar New Year, and we visited Huai'an Fantawild, Glorious Orient, Shanghai People Park Amusement Park, Shanghai Century Park Amusement Park, Suzhou Amusement Land Forest World, Legoland Shanghai, Happy Valley Shanghai, Shanghai Haicheng Ocean Park, China Dinosaur Land, and a little kiddie fair outside of it, and then Shanghai Disneyland. Now, the previous episode on part 1 of this little week in Shanghai, we discussed all the parks that are in Shanghai itself, like it's within the city limits. This time we're going to talk about the parks that are in Jiangsu province, technically, on this particular trip, which include the Huai'an Fantawild Glorious Orient, Suzhou Amusement Land Forest World, and China Dinosaur Park or China Dinosaur Land, depending on which logo you look at. So also make sure to check out the previous episode about all the Shanghai parks or trip. But today is going to be 3 phenomenal big steel coasters that deserve your visit. Easy, there's no doubt about it. And they're all quite different, all different manufacturers. And I'm excited to talk about it a little bit.
So yeah, our what ended up being the first park of our trip was also like our most ambitious park of the trip. Our 3+ hour train ride each way journey to up to Huai'an. Huai'an is a tier. Is it a tier 2 city or a tier 3 city?
3. Yeah,
it's pretty small, and it's not impossible to get to, obviously, but it was definitely a process. And we ended up doing this on day 1 on the Friday of the last weekend of Spring Festival, because Saturday and Sunday it was already looking pretty difficult to do that, and Friday, Saturday, Sunday that weekend had the best weather, so we were like, Friday was the obvious day to do it. So we really hit the ground running. And actually, it worked out with the jet lag that we were having, because like we went to bed really early the night before and we were up really early the next day, and that was our earliest morning. of the trip was getting up to do our train ride to Glorious Orient. So it actually kind of worked out.
Yeah, and it was kind of nice because we had that energy still, It's like, we came in, went to bed, got up early, but we had that beginning of the trip energy. Sometimes at the end of a trip,
the beginning momentum, it ended up being perfect. Like, I wouldn't have done it any other way.
So I think it worked out really well. And it was nice to get like the really long travel out of the way first, because it really was kind of a journey. Usually, I think historically, we've kind of hopped around and done. We would have probably, if this was a longer trip, done like a stop in Jiangsu and then the parks from there and then move on to wherever we're going to next. But because this really was like 8 nights in one hotel in Shanghai, we made all of our trips day trips, which made this particular one quite a journey. I think it took us almost 6 hours from leaving the hotel to the front gate, between DD train ride and another hour DD.
It was a nice day though. The train journey, like our car.
Beautiful.
Even though we had issues getting tickets on some of the days, it really had to do with certain segments of the trip that we weren't actually in the vehicle, because, man, the ride out was wonderful. We had like the whole train car to ourselves. It was a lot busier coming back. I think that was actually the part of the train journey equation that was what we were working around. But it was overall a very pleasant experience, even though we definitely spent way more time actually traveling than we did in the park itself. It was still like a great experience. And the pressure was not as bad because like we had already visited the Glorious Orient Park in Ningbo, which is very similar to this. It's one of the 4 Glorious Orient concept parks done by Fantawild, which is like their current generation of like ultra high profile destination style parks. And we had all day for just this one park, whereas when we went to the Glorious Orient in Ningbo, we were splitting it between Glorious Orient and Oriental Heritage, their next door park. The next door park for our Huai'an Glorious Orient is the Booty Bears Kiddie Park, which was super busy, and we might have been tempted to go and do a credit run if it A, wasn't so crazy busy, and B, if we felt like they would actually let us ride the kiddie coasters, which, based on our attempts of riding the kiddie coasters in Ningbo, there's no guarantees. We were denied the Vekoma Family Boomerang in Ningbo, and so the Vekoma Family Boomerang at the Booty Bear Park in Huai'an, we felt like maybe wouldn't be worth our time.
I feel like it would have been kind of fun to go into Boonie Bears just because I want to see the phenomenon, because Boonie Bears is such a popular franchise in China that I actually didn't even realize a couple years ago is a Fantawild media thing. And now it's really like taking off, and Boonie Bears is like on packaging for food and on billboards and billboard, like people know Boonie Bears. We saw people wearing Boonie Bears shirts at Disney, like I kid you not, Boonie Bears is a thing. So
yeah, Boonie Bears has permeated the Disney market.
Maybe I want to see what the hype is about, because there's Boonie Bear stuff in the Fantawild, Glorious Orient, and Oriental Heritage Parks. But it's like, little sections, but it's not like a whole park is themed to it. So one day we'll step foot into Boonie Bears, but it was just not a priority for this particular trip because we had to go such a long distance and getting train tickets was kind of difficult. So we had like a set amount of hours in Huai'an. And then, yeah, it was just kind of, we had to work, but it was so busy.
Yeah,
there was not really a chance to do that park.
And like, my God, the Boonie Bears Park was you could see the swaths of people going into the Boonie Bears Park compared to the Glorious Orient Park. And the Glorious Orient Park was still quite busy in its own right. So you can only imagine how massive the crowds were at Boonie Bears.
And so we started our day in the morning. It seemed really busy, but I think most people went to the Boonie Bears Park. And then when we get into our park, it wasn't too crazy.
Yeah, we were panicking a little.
Yeah, we were like, oh God, all the parking lots are full. People were parking on the streets. We're like, it's not something we'd ever really seen before. And the park was really kind of out there, so we had no idea what to expect. However, it wasn't that busy in the beginning because the big new thing in China is the afternoon tickets. And I've noticed this with Dinosaur Park too, and maybe even with Suzhou Amusement Land Forest World, is that people buy afternoon tickets, so it gets busy in the afternoon. And so it was really not that bad. We went over to Fighter Jet first. And I think the park had been open for like 30 minutes, maybe an hour at this point, because it got there a little bit later than we originally expected. But yeah, the line didn't seem that long. The VIP line wasn't open, or maybe we just didn't know how it worked, but nobody was using it. And so the line had a couple switchbacks, and so we just waited it out.
And so this was a huge highlight ride for us on our trip where we went to the Ningbo Glorious Orient. Identical in pretty much every measurable way, with the exception of once we rode it, we realized this one definitely didn't run as fast as the one in Ningbo. We also got, I think, 4 rides on the one in Ningbo, which we were very lucky with the crowd levels on that visit. This time around, we got the credit. We rode it. We had a great ride on it. We were in the front row. It was awesome. We ended up not having time to ride it again, which was a pity. But lucky for us, we're going to our 3rd Glorious Orient Park in a couple of months. In fact, we may have already gone by the time this episode releases. So that will be our 3rd Vekoma Top Gun fighter jet coaster, and hopefully at that Glorious Orient we will have opportunities for more re-rides. But for this one, it was more about getting the credit and making sure that we hit all of the other attractions in the park that we wanted to make time for. And it would have been nice to have ridden it a second time, but it's also like, it is what it is. Like, we've got other shots at it.
Yeah, it is funny because I did fully expect to do a multi-ride on this, but the park, the Glorious Orient parks are so full with so many different kinds of attractions that are all worth your time, that it's like, oh damn, now we're like 6 hours of the park day and we still haven't gone back to Top Gun or Flight Deck. Wow, am I sounding like Great America right now? Or what?
Close enough. Fighter jet.
And I will say, like Alex mentioned, you know, we had so much other stuff to do, we didn't get a chance to ride. And it's also, I didn't feel that much of a pressure personally, because we did the one in Ningbo a few times, and that one, because it was summery weather, it ran much faster.
Yeah. So, frankly, the Ningbo one was better.
I think the Ningbo one was better, yeah.
I was like, oh, it was great, but it just didn't hit the way that riding the Ningbo one for the first time, that one was just...
This one, I will say it was fun to photograph because it was brighter. Like the color wasn't, it was prettier.
The setting was a little better.
And actually waiting in the queue meant we stood in the little platform on the water watching the trains roll by, is where we never waited in Ningbo, so we just always went straight to the station.
And we just had more to do this time around. Yeah. I mean, we were lucky enough to get on the kiddie credits this time. For whatever reason, like I said, Ningbo, they were not interested in letting us ride the kiddie coasters, but in Huai'an, we were able to get all 3 coaster credits, so I was grateful that we were able to do that. But it was a little time consuming with the crowds, but you know, it was something that we got to do at this Glorious Orient that we couldn't do in the Ningbo Park. And then also, I think like the other obvious reason why we needed to go to this park, aside from Top Gun, was well, I guess we can talk. Let's see. You've got everything in order here. You want to talk about Ziyuan next?
Yeah.
Or did you want to talk about...
Well, we can talk about...
And you want to talk about Railroad Warriors?
Well, I can talk about both. You can talk about Frontline Charge in the middle.
Yeah, that's fine.
So
I'll talk about Frontline Charge.
Juyan is the dark ride that is inspired by Pirates of the Caribbean in Shanghai Disneyland. So it uses a boat system where the boats rotate and you go through big scenes and you use screens. It's not quite as refined and fluid, but it's still a very good attraction. And so the story is kind of confusing because you don't speak Mandarin. I don't speak Mandarin. But maybe for listening you speak Mandarin, but neither of us really speak Mandarin. And so a lot of it is just like context clues and kind of knowing the background. So if I'm not mistaken, it goes about a particular gentleman that gets involved in shipbuilding in, I think, in the UK or in America, and then on the open ocean, and then eventually gets into war, I believe on the Chinese side of things, gets destroyed, dies, and then there's an underwater scene where you can just see, this particular ride has this scene. The other one we did in Ningbo didn't have this scene, but he's just floating around with all the debris in like this bubbly world. And then later on, the ride finishes with like him rising, or like a little submarine finds the ship, and like rising from the ashes, or from the depths, I should say, from the rust, comes the ship, and then follows the Chinese Marine. And so there's like pretty much like a showcase at the end of like how powerful the Navy is and the Marines are, and like the ships and the aircraft. And it's like, it ends with like a very patriotic display of the fleet. And it's like, I just love that, because pretty much everything in this park ends with a very
It's all
It's
like
all like
propaganda.
I guess so. Yeah, it's all like wow, look at how great and how powerful we are and how far we've come as a nation. And that's the whole point of the park. The whole point of the park is to show like China through the war times into modern societies. Every single ride is kind of war themed. It has some sort of aspect of war in it, which is a very strange concept for the West. And we've already did a whole episode about it last season about the Ningbo Park. So I'll spare you all the details, but it is still a very fascinating concept. And the ride itself is pretty good. I would say effect-wise is nice. It's just the only thing that I don't like about it is that it spends a lot of time in front of screens where like the screens are doing a lot of showing things and then you just move on. It doesn't feel as nicely transitioned as, for example, Pirates of the Caribbean would be. That's my only downside of it, but it's a fun ride and it's a very cool ride. Like the show building for it is a giant ship dock hangar, the ship sticking out of it, and then you enter the ship. And then that's the queue, and then the show building, of course, is the ride. But it's a very impressive ride, especially for something that isn't Disney, Universal, or like Efteling or Europa Park. So I really enjoy the Fantawild, Glorious Orient rides, and so this is one of the big ones. It's not my favorite of the rides, but it is one of like the big must-do attractions there. Like you can't miss it. If you're there, you need to do it.
It's very cool going to a park like this and experiencing a ride of that kind of scale, of that kind of scope. So even though it's obviously not perfect and it does not really compare to like Pirates of the Caribbean, it's such a neat experience. It's such a neat ride to do. But then, of course, the real dark ride star, the ride that we really love is Railroad Warriors, which I'll let Sean talk. Do you want to talk about that now, or do you want me to talk about Frontline Charge first?
Go ahead and break it over Frontline Charge.
Frontline Charge is the kiddie coaster that is themed. It has the same basic theme as Railroad Warriors, and all of the Glorious Orient parks have Railroad Warriors and the companion kiddie coaster that is designed to satisfy little thrill seekers that would be too scared to ride Railroad Warriors, because Railroad Warriors is terrifying and very scary. So at this park, it's just a Vekoma, like the large scale roller skater. It's like a Flight of the Hippogriff kind of clone. Ran great, really nice ride. It's an actual Vekoma, obviously, because they've got their Vekoma contract with Fighter Jet. And so yeah, I wasn't sure if they would let us ride it, but it was nice to get the credit and a nice palate cleanser after something as intense as Railroad Warriors, which we actually rode twice this time because it's so incredible.
So going and moving on to Railroad Warriors, this ride we've discussed previously in our episode Fantawild, Ningbo, and the darkest dark ride ever, or whatever we called the episode. And the dark ride, because we had then never read anything like it before. It was our first ever time on it. We were spooked. We were scared. It was a terrifying experience because what happens is you step into a Jeep or some sort of Humphrey and you have a bunch of machine guns in front of everyone. And then you just start this journey where you are on a train heist and you are shooting at the Japanese in is it World War II, I would assume. And so you move your way through this incredibly elaborate, highly detailed, slightly interactive dark ride. And it's just a very scary experience. And it finishes with a train bridge blowing up, a train coming at you, collapsing the bridge, and then you finish with a very patriotic song, right? That's just kind of how everything ends. And so this particular installation, I think, was better. This installation was added later, but they made some pretty pivotal changes to it. You spend less time in the cornfield. There's no truck coming at you in the cornfield. But other than that, the actual train part where you're in the train yard, and it's much better. There's artificial snow blowing everywhere. So it's like you're in a snowy, cold, wintry scene. There's a couple of trains parked there. You move between the trains, and there's a lot more kinetic energy, and I feel like the set is much grander in the beginning. You don't spend your time in a hangar getting instructions on what's happening, which happens in Ningbo. The first scene is like, okay, this is what's happening. We're going to be shooting. Here's a target to shoot at, and then you start. This one just dives right into it. You leave the station, and you're in some cold, snowy alley with like snow, the fake snow effect. And then the doors open up, and you're in the action. You're between the trains. The shit's happening right off the bat, and then it's just a nonstop crazy thrill ride. The articulation of the vehicles is very smooth but very intense, And it is just one of those rides where you cannot make this up. You would not see this in a theme park outside of this chain, because it's just too crazy to be real. And I am a big fan of Robot Warriors. I have ridden every version, both twice now. And by the time you listen to this, we'll probably have ridden a version in a different one, because we're going to more of these parks in a few weeks. And yeah, Robot Warriors is the tits, one of my favorite dark rides in the world. And not because the subject matter is fun. Like, it's not fun to be killing each other and killing the enemy, blowing up trains, and it's very intense.
It's very
real. It's very real, because the physical sets are so well done. It's scary stuff. The alarms, oh man, all the gunfire, nonstop gunfire sounds. It's very overwhelming. I'd say it's pretty intense. The first time I rode this in Ningbo, we were screaming the whole time. We were so scared.
Yeah, we were totally caught off guard.
Yeah, because we didn't expect it.
Did we ride the one in Ningbo twice, or did we just ride it once?
Yeah, and the second time I rode it with a lot more people, and it was not as scary. But then we rode this one, which is a little bit different, and I do prefer this one in Huai'an. It's a little scarier still, but it's also a little more. It's just a little better, I think. By the way, it's you come for Fighter Jet and you stay for Railroad Warriors, and I will say that it's probably true for all of the Glorious Orients.
Definitely. Let's see, what else did we do?
We did that family coaster thing. It looked like a wacky worm, but it was like really high quality. Yeah,
the little Junior. That was another little Jinma kiddie coaster with the nice trains, the little motorbike lap bars. I forget what is it called. The kiddie coaster there. It is called Skytrack. Okay, it's just a normal, not a particularly descriptive name, but yeah, it sits on like a wacky worm style plot, but it's like a souped up wacky worm. That was a nice one to get the credit for, because again, like there was no guarantees we'd be granted entry onto that, so we gave it a shot and we were pleasantly surprised.
And it ran pretty well. It's almost a shame that it does so little for how comfortable and how nice the hardware is.
Mm-hmm. And then the other major attraction we did was this giant IMAX 3D theater, which was a beautiful. I mean, it might be the largest screen I've ever seen in my life.
So big, I could not believe how big it was.
Really well done 3D.
Oh my god, it was so high quality. It's like IMAX level, if not better. It's all Fantawild produced, and it follows the story of the fall of the nationalists, and then the rise of the Communist Party, and then the rise of China, and then it just does that by tracking the GDP every few years. It's very fascinating, and then it
really ends something else.
And it ends with the race of the GDP surpassing that of the US, I think, and it's okay. China is surpassing by 2030 or 2035, and it's the biggest economical power. And I think they may have already surpassed that. I haven't looked any of this up, but It is a fascinating addition to what the rest of the park is already about, which is the rise of China, And I found it quite fascinating because the quality was so good and it was very graphic, but I also thought I kind of learned something because it's a 30-minute show, 25-minute show. The time flies because it's fast-paced.
This is what they have instead of a dark ride. There's a
sort of hangar breakout.
A dark ride hangar breakout at the Ningbo Park, and instead of that attraction at this park, they have this theater, and it sits in like the same basic spot that this other dark ride was. So we were like, we'll check it out because it's just something new and different. And
I heard good things about it because I heard it was good quality, and I will say it was good quality. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's unique to this park, but I can't remember. Maybe one of the other Glorious Orients have it.
I think Ningbo has it as a show as well. We just didn't do it. Remember, we found out it may have had it as a show. It's just that the Huai'an Park is missing one of the dark rides, and so maybe the whole layout of the park was shifted around. But either way, I thought it was kind of cool, and I'm kind of glad we did it because it was. I will say, entertainment-wise, show-wise, Fantawild is his quality. So I'm glad we did that, even though it seemed a little bit.
It was a unique experience worth doing.
Yeah.
And overall, it just was a nice addition to like all of the unique experiences that we did in the park on that day. Just because that was really what it was about for us, is like diversifying our Glorious Orient experience.
We're getting to the point
just like riding fighter jet over and over again.
Yeah, 100%. And the Fantawild parks are, just in general, some of our favorite parks in China. So we actually plan to do a couple more Fantawilds this spring. again, by the time you listen to this, may have already visited. But we're planning on doing more Fantawild Glorious Orients. We're going to do a Dreamland. We're going to do another Oriental Heritage, I think. And these are like the concept parks, but they do them so well. And the dark rides are such good quality. They have good coasters. Most of the resorts feature at least one.
Just very reliable parks, and the rides are open and generally fairly good operations. Like it's
nice stuff.
It's comforting having these parks on your itinerary, knowing that like when you go, you're probably going to have a good time.
Yeah, and they have good mini apps on Alipay, WeChat. If you want to buy from the line pass, some of the resorts like Ningbo offer it. It's just like a really good product, and it's like Alex said, consistent. So if you put a couple of these on your trip, you're at least going to have something of decent quality every few days. Because sometimes in China, if you really start running out of stuff, or you start doing Sunex and OCTs, you just don't know what you're going to get. But this is Fantawild's pretty consistent in our product, so that's kind of nice, and that's why we love Fantawild so much. But what we also loved, if you're ready to move on,
I'm ready,
is Suzhou Amusement Land Forest World. And I didn't think I would love it because I don't even see the front side of the park on my previous visit because I spent so much time. I spent a lot of time dealing with the two coasters I rode on my first visit there, which is Beyond the Cloud and Broken Roller Coaster. But I needed to come back to get all the credits that I'd missed, and Alex needed to come back to get all the credits, period. And there was a couple dark rides that we wanted to check out. So we actually ended up spending an entire day at Suzhou Amusement Land Forest World. But we had a great day. It was awesome. I feel like the park is...
I loved the park.
Yeah, it's just so well maintained.
It's a pretty well maintained park, and they've made some additions apparently since your visit. Like they're definitely growing into themselves and getting their bearings, and as far as like what they want to accomplish as a theme park. Like the area around Beyond the Cloud didn't really have any development when Sean went, and that wasn't even like a year ago. And now it has like, there's a themed area around it. The tone is a little odd because you have like this terrifying thrill coaster, but the theme is like fairy tales. So it's like,
it's
Snow
like,
White and Hansel and Gretel.
Snow White and the extreme mech launch coaster,
Yeah. Snow White and the 77 mile per hour, 200 foot tall launch coaster. But yeah, so the first order of business, we went to Broken Rail Coaster, which is their other e-ticket coaster in the park. It's a Jinma Rides tilt coaster, or Broken Rail, as they call them. This ride is, I think, pretty much the only tilt coaster of Chinese design that Western audiences have access to, because there's a double track Jinma Broken Rail coaster at the Sunac Park in Hefei. But it has a very, very low height and weight maximum. So most
actually
people
enforced.
And it's like they're very strict about it. So we actually aren't aware of many, if any, people who have been granted entry onto that ride on the days that it is open. Meanwhile, Suzhou Forest World has a ride from the same product line, and like weight and height did not seem to be a factor at all for us when we were there. The wait for it, though, the long line was a factor. So we were able to acquire express passes for this ride
using
via WeChat. And not only did it get us to the front of the line, like skipping the line, but we got a front seat ride on it as well. It's like there's a double benefit to doing these things, because in Chinese parks, like they'll let you onto the train typically first if you purchase this service, and that means you can choose where you want to sit. But typically in Chinese parks, if you've listened to us before talk about Chinese parks, you know that like row requests are almost never accommodated outside of things like Disney. So getting to be the first one to choose your row means you get to pick the front row, and that that's
or
just
you
how it
simply
works.
get assigned row one anyway because they start in front. So that usually works out. And then
So buying the front of the line pass has this double benefit for enthusiasts. But I really enjoyed this ride. It was like, it's always novel riding Jinma coasters and riding rides based on like more advanced looking types of rides. It was very like Siren's Curse-esque, but like a bit more rudimentary. But it had a great sequence of events. A great drop. 5 inversions, had a little helix in there. I really liked it. I enjoyed it a lot, even though like Beyond the Cloud kind of stole the show. It was still like a great ride, and it was a great way to start off the day.
So I wouldn't say it's Broken Roller Coaster. It's actually just amazingly smooth. It just doesn't feel like what you expect from it. The angle is a little bit weird, and it takes a while to get the train dropping on the tilts. But man, the ride itself, it just runs really well. Layout's kind of funky, but not like in a bad way. And then I guess I can just run through the layout real quick, because you have your tilt drop. There's a tunnel, and then you have a Immelman, followed by a Cobra Roll, followed by a kind of an interesting big helix, an upward helix that then goes down again, like a helix and a half, followed by 2 corkscrews. Or the second corkscrew thereof is kind of a really weird shape. It's like definitely the funkiest moment on the ride, and then it turns into a turn to the brake run. It does quite a bit. I think it's a really clever ride. Really one of those modern Jinmas that I think is overlooked. And then you have the restraint system, kind of like a ratcheting version of a B&M wing coaster restraint, and it's very comfortable and smooth. I think it's a can't miss ride, and it's really easy to access outside of Shanghai. It's one of the easiest parts.
I loved it for everything about it, and that was like objectively likable, and all the things about it that were super weird that we liked because it's weird.
And speaking of weird, ready for a crazy trip? There's a literal dark ride named Crazy Trip, and Crazy Trip is quite crazy because Crazy Trip.
That was a crazy trip.
Yeah, it was a crazy trip.
So dumb.
Crazy Trip is a robotic arm style dark ride. Think of Forbidden Journey at the Universal Parks, except for it's some exploratory dude and some monsters and like Avatar-ish kind of course, animals.
Like
everything's
many
Avatar.
Dark rides in China takes tonal and imagery inspiration from Avatar.
And so does this ride. It's very Avatar coded and very Avatar colored. The motion was smooth but very intense. I mean, there was moments we were really being thrown around on this thing. And there's a couple of open spaces, but overall, for like doing this kind of dark ride and it not being like a Universal product, I thought it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. I mean, it wasn't anything to write home about. If you have to focus on stuff, I would still say focus on this over the drop tower simulator thing that we did, but it's focus on the coasters first. Yeah.
It was enjoyable to do. And well, I guess we can talk about the drop tower thingy, which I loved this ride in concept because it's like a Tower of Terror type attraction, but like there is a screen that is all the way up and down the tower. Granted, it's not super tall. It's not as tall as a Tower of Terror type ride. It has a cute aesthetic. It looks very Efteling from the outside.
It really does,
very, like earth tone fairy tales with vines and stuff growing on this flowers, like European clock tower kind of thing. But yeah, the execution of it, like the experience of it was not exactly enjoyable, but it was like a unique one to say that you've done. And a great concept that could be amazing if it was executed with a little bit more finesse and like maintained a little bit better. Like these dark rides are not great dark ride experiences in and of themselves, but mostly like novel because you're riding them at a Chinese park and they're like an independent Chinese park that has done these unconventional dark rides or like otherwise expensive and unlikely
and sometimes
dark ride experiences.
I feel like sometimes it's just fun to kind of get a concept because there's a lot of different concepts out there, and Chinese love flying theaters or doing weird things like a drop tower that's really just a big simulator, like using the entire walls inside of the drop tower to simulate things. I find that even if it's really poor quality, because I didn't think this was that great at all, it's still cool to just kind of say, oh, what kind of it did they come up with? Because it's kind of nice when it's not just a copy of something that already exists somewhere else. It's their own version. Like they did come up with this. It was like, okay, some manufacturer, some company dreamed up this drop tower simulator, and now this park in Suzhou built it. But it's not like it's copied from like a Western park. You know what I'm saying? So I kind of enjoy when they come up with these weird things. And it's always like some weird god theme, you know, like some weird mythical god.
To do something and be surprised by it, even if it wasn't that good. It's like, oh, it was so worth it. Like it was so worth
doing
the facet, like the trouble and like just doing it for the sake of doing it. Let's see. Oops, I just closed the notes by accident. I'm sorry. I'm just navigating around.
So next we'll just talk about
excited.
The kiddie coaster. So there's one kiddie coaster and one spinning coaster. the kiddie coaster itself, God, I have terrible recollection. It's just kind of like
it's like
roller
another
skater,
roller skater.
right?
It's yet another roller skater type Jinma coaster right at the front of the park. It was very busy. That was the longest line of the day. Was the tiny kiddie coaster. Always nice to get a cute credit. Had cute views of Beyond the Cloud from the
it's right next to Beyond the Cloud, so it's kind of cute. It seems that Dr. Goose character that we also see at the Wuxi Sunek Park. I need to look into more what this character is.
He has his own restaurant.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on there. And then we did the spinning coaster, which is designed by a Chinese firm, but it is pretty much like those the Zimperla multi-vehicle spinning coasters that there's one at Flamingo Land, for example. It's kind of like that, except for it's manufactured by a Chinese manufacturer. And
they're actually pretty fun. They've got a nice layout.
Yeah, I don't have the name right. Do you have the name?
You go around twice. I'll pull it up real quick.
I know the ride itself is just called spinning coaster, and it even says spinning coaster on the vehicles, and a pretty nice emblem that's on it.
Yeah, it's just a Jinma.
Oh, this is Jinma. Okay.
Jinma spinning coaster, ZXC16. Jinma has sold a ton of these. They have sold over 100 units in this product line.
Time to hit them.
There's multiple in like Shanghai, like that Smurf theme park.
That's
that
right.
Indoor Smurf park has one. There used to be a Sega Joypolis park in Shanghai that had one, but they couldn't operate. It was the tale is all this time. You build a roller coaster inside of a building that's not designed to have a roller coaster in it, and when you run the coaster, the building starts to demolish itself from the inside. So that whole project fell apart. But it was yet another one of those. It was the exact same coaster as this spinner at Suzhou Forest World.
And then
the smallest.
Last but not least, of course, is Beyond the Cloud. So Beyond the Cloud. So my first.
What can we say?
My first time riding it, I had to really, really struggle to get on this coaster. It was a journey. Maintenance management had to get involved to let me ride because I was technically over the height limit that the park had imposed, not the manufacturer. So eventually, maintenance said, "Okay, it's cool, you can ride." So we rode. But then that was kind of a really stressful experience. It was very hot last time I visited, and it didn't run that well. But the whole thing was just, it didn't leave a great impression on me because also it was just like a stressful situation. But this time around, they didn't care. They let me ride. I just mentioned once, like, I went on it before. I was ready to be like, hey, do we need to speak to management? But they were like, okay, just ride. And it's okay, cool. So there was no stress. They just let me ride. It was great. And we rode a couple times and 2 different trains. So they're only running one train at a time because it's a Chinese roller coaster. So you'll never really see more than one at a time. However, midway through the day, they switched around the train. So the train that we rode in the morning was, I think, train number 1. And it was not running that well. It was kind of bumpy, at least in my experience. I thought it was kind of bumpy. It was still like a really powerful, crazy, insane experience. But it was still kind of bumpy. Then we rode later today with the other train, train 2. And that ran so smooth. I feel like that was like the ideal ride we had on it. It was incredible. We rode it in front row and back row, did we not? And oh my God, it ran so well. We had a great rides on it. And it just shot up my rankings. I like it so much better now.
I loved it. I thought all 3 rides were really good. Maybe it was just like the side of the train. I was on the right side of the train, I think, for all of our rides. But we did front and back, and then we did front again. I forget our exact distribution of rides, but
so for those who don't know the layout, it's a rolling start out of the station, and then you have a 205-foot top hat, kind of like accelerator, except for the launch is longer. And then right as you come out of that top hat, you just go straight into a barrel roll. You have 205-foot top hat, and you just boom into a barrel roll. That's 62 meters, by the way. And then you are followed that with a reverse Immelman. Or is it an Immelman? I guess it's an Immelman-ish. It's an Immelman, but you do this thing where like you correct yourself upright, and there's a big drop out of it. Then there's a really sharp airtime hill, like super sharp airtime hill, followed by a really big cobra roll, like unnecessarily big to be honest with you, but it's very big. And I find that to be
a neat shape to it. It reminds me of like Hydra at Dorney Park, like that shaping of it, where it rolls. It has a very wide curve to it.
It almost feels like the important part of the ride. They have a vertical loop, which I enjoy vertical loops, and the way the vertical loop wraps around the Cobra Roll makes me enjoy that vertical loop more. And then there's 2 really sharp airtime hills into the brake run. The order operations seem very unconventional. The fact that you have a couple of really low elements, and then you have 2 really large inversions, I enjoyed that a lot because that barrel roll is just insane. It's just crazy. Like I remember them building it. I think it was supposed to be called Hurricane Coaster, and we're looking at each other like, we're really gonna do that barrel roll thing. And then they did it, and it runs really well. Yeah, I think it's a highlight, and it's honestly not that hard to get to because Suzhou from Shanghai is like a 30-minute train ride, and then it's like a 25-minute Uber without traffic, a Didi. You can get here easily.
Totally doable.
Very doable. So I would recommend anyone.
Especially compared to Huai'an. Like coming off of our Huai'an day, we were like, oh wow, we're already here.
Wow, already here. This is great.
Wow, it's so close.
And Suzhou is just fun in general. Like if you want to do some other stuff around there, like the old canals and stuff, Suzhou is pretty historically significant. So I think like a Suzhou day or 2 can always be great. And then this coaster is worth to visit. I will say that now. Like of the big 3, where would you put it? Between Stardust Racers, Hyperia, and Beyond the Cloud, how would you rank them?
I think I would still put Stardust Racers at the top. I love Hyperia, but it didn't wow me the way that Beyond the Cloud wowed me. It's up there very high as far as like my Mac coaster rankings, although we haven't ridden DC Rivals or Voltron yet. We've ridden many of the biggest and baddest Mac coasters, stuff like Flash at Lewa Adventure, which is a personal favorite of mine, or like Ride to Happiness by Tomorrowland. This one is really up there. Like it is ferocious. It's got that like Velocicoaster level of intensity for the whole ride. The whole ride feels like the Mosasaurus roll on Velocicoaster. Like it's that level of intensity for the entire experience, which is pretty neat. I hope we see a clone of it. And when we were there, I was even trying to see if we could drop it right on top of where Accelerator is at Knott's Berry Farm, maybe if it would fit. But it's too big. But they would have to remove Supreme Scream too, probably, to get it to fit. But we can dream.
How I would rank it is probably Stardust, Beyond the Cloud, Hyperia. I don't think it's very difficult. Yeah. I still prefer Stardust because I like the racing element so much.
Poor Stardust. Stardust is having a hard time.
By the time of recording, Stardust is...
Hopefully Stardust is reopened by the time this episode comes out. It's already been closed for 3 weeks.
Yeah, by the time this season launches, this Stardust better be open again. So yeah, it's definitely up there. It's one of the better coasters out there and definitely worth to visit. Again, it's another one of those things where like every park in Jiangsu has like their e-ticket crazy coaster, and this is worth a visit.
The fact that this park has their a 5-inversion custom tilt coaster, and it's still not like the focal point coaster of the park, really tells you how impressive
that's a great BT that's for
Beyond
sure.
the Cloud is, because the tilt coaster is fabulous in its own right, and if it was in some other park where it was the only coaster, it would be worth the trouble. But because you have both of these coasters in this park, it's like a must. Like it's a must hit if you're going to China.
And I will just say, it's just a generally nicely maintained theme park. It's just everything is freshly painted. You can just tell that like they're continuously updating it. They added the new restrooms next to the coaster. Stuff like that is really important because sometimes
staff were really, really friendly.
Yeah, sometimes in China you just don't know. Sometimes you're gonna get a park that is, especially in the Suzhou parks, that are built really nicely, but then they're just not maintained. This park really felt like it was different in that regard. This kind of felt like China Dinosaur Land, which we're going to talk about next.
Yeah.
In the sense that like it's always being kept up.
This park and China Dinosaur Land really feel like they're doing what they're trying to do. They're doing what the Suzhou parks are attempting to do and not having success.
Yeah, they're trying to deliver kind of like a consistent experience. Even I won't say the Forest World is that nice. Like the most of it's just concrete-y, but it is all very nicely maintained. And there's 2 mountains inside the park. It's really cool.
There's parts of it. The part of the back of the park was really nice, where the Rapids ride and the spinning coaster, and then they have the big lake and all the food booths and stuff like that. Corner of the park is really cute, and I think they're working their way towards making the rest of the park a little bit nicer. Since they're having such success with the park and attendance. So,
and then our last park that we're going to talk about this episode is China Dinosaurs Park or China Dinosaur Land. And so we were originally supposed to go to Shanghai Disneyland that day, but unfortunately, Shanghai Disneyland sold out, which you may have heard about in our previous episode about this. So we actually extended our trip by a day, but we didn't do that until we got to China Dinosaur Park. So we said, you know what, if we can't go to Shanghai Disney, let's just buy tickets to Changzhou and then go to China Dinosaurs Park again, because we haven't been on Dinoconda in a few years. And we took a train out there, and it took a DD to the park. And it wasn't until we were in the DD that we're like, what if we just like extended it? You know, like, let's just look at flights and just look at hotels. It's what if we just did one more day and still went to Disney? Because it's hard, because I think we went on this trip to go to Disney and then we ended up not even going to Disney. So we went to Starbucks. There's like a little shopping center, like an outlet mall that's in front of the park. It's part of like the park's entrance. And we just sat down at Starbucks.
It's all dinosaur themed.
All dinosaur themed.
The big dinosaur mall.
Everything is dinosaurs. So we went inside and we just ordered a bunch of like snacks and coffees and whatnot. It was and we just made like this 30-minute business meeting out of it, where I was like, all right, let me call the hotel. Let me check with the hotel. Let me extend the stay. You know, okay, we're using points for the hotel, whatever.
We're looking at the flights.
You look at the flights. Let's rebook the flights. Okay, let's see if we can book Shanghai Disney packages before we do any of this. And all this kind of came together in 30 minutes. We had like pretty killer pastries. I forgot what we had, but I remember it being pretty good.
Got some coffee. We got a crepe cake.
Crepe cake.
Crepe cakes make everything better.
Yeah, we had like a croissant thing. It was good. And then
yogurt. We got yogurt. The yogurt parfaits.
So random. And then we had our mixed berry Americanos. And 30 minutes later, smiles on our face, we walk out of that Starbucks with like an extra day added to our trip. And I'd even because like changed work things about it. I guess it was all going to line up.
Yeah, Sean was handling hotels and flights, and I was handling the tickets and early admission and the fast passes. And we both like little business meeting at the Starbucks, the China Dinosaur Starbucks.
30 minutes later, we walk into China Dinosaur Land with another day on our trip, which also works because I'm always sad the last day of the trip. My trips can be 4 weeks long and I'll still be sad on the last day of the trip that it's over. Alex is more of a like, let's go home kind of guy. But I'm always
listen, don't get me wrong. I wasn't ready to go either, but I was really excited the night before when we were like, well, let's go to China Dinosaur Park. I feel like that's the obvious thing that we should be doing with our extra day. And I'm so glad we went, because I love this park. And like some of the other parks that we revisited on this Jiangsu Shanghai trip, it was a park that we had done in 2019 and like split the day up with another park. When we first went to this park, we did a morning at Joy World and rode Starry Sky Ripper, the custom B&M flying coaster. But we were only at that park for like 90 minutes because the park kind of sucks.
And we weren't allowed on the
flyer.
We
couldn't do the Mauer Sky Loop.
Yeah.
Like it was. So we were just like, let's just do China Dinosaurs, and like, man, we had a great time.
Really a great time. I mean, I remember fondly from the first visit, like, oh, this park is different. This park is nice. This park is busy. It's maintained. It has a cohesive theme going on. Even like, everything is dinosaurs. It doesn't matter if it's street food, it's dinosaur themed. If it's graffiti, it's dinosaur themed. If it's jungle, it's dinosaur themed. If it's steak, it's dinosaur snake. Everything is dinosaur. And they also have a museum with a really impressive amount of dinosaur fossils inside, because Changzhou was one of the regions where they first found fossils. So we never took the time to do any of that. We'll talk about it a little bit, but this time they actually did go into the museum. But there was a couple of new things there. I guess I'll start with the fact that they used to have a log flume that went into the museum and then came out of the museum via a drop. That was there last time we were there. Had a massive line, like it was packed. And so we never rode it. And then they replaced it with a like Jurassic Park River Adventure style boat ride. Like it's much bigger, higher capacity, high quality, slightly inspired by Avatar as everything in China. And they replaced that, and it's also inside the museum, and then it splashes down, and it's gorgeous, and it feels like the natural evolution of that log flume. And it was a great ride. I'm glad we did it. It's themed to a feathered, colorful dinosaur kind of chasing us through.
It was a nice mix between like Navi River Journey and the Jurassic Park dark ride at Universal Studios Beijing.
But also a boat ride.
But also a shoot the shoot.
Yeah.
So
and of
really
course,
nicely done.
It had an elevator lift that takes you up and then dumps you out. You can tell that
that was awesome.
You can tell that they used a lot more space for like the bigger scenes. And it was pretty decent quality. I wouldn't say it was like anything crazy spectacular, but it was nice. It was polished, and I think it was a great fit for the
set
park.
Designs were beautiful. They did a really nice job with like fake landscaping, like alien and prehistoric landscaping, and also interspersed with real live landscaping, which is also something that reminded me a lot of Pandora.
Yeah.
At Animal Kingdom. So like that was a huge pleasant surprise. Obviously we rode Dinoconda. That was the focal point.
Before we move on to
Dinoconda,
I want to mention quickly that outside there is actually a couple of animatronics on this ride, a la River Adventure. Oh, yeah. Inside is mostly screens, but it did have a nice part where after the elevator there was a big turn and another big scene, and then you kind of roll towards your drop. There was actually more inside than I had anticipated, so I want to just give a shout out. I think the ride's really creative and it's a cool ride. It can't be missed.
Loved it. But
yeah, of course, what really can't be missed is Dinoconda.
Yeah. And we rode twice. Both times we bought fast passes, and we were benefactors of the kindness of the staff in the parks, because like our 2019 visit, we needed help. We couldn't really get a fast pass ourselves. You needed a Chinese bank account in order to access their
a Chinese phone number. So our WeChat and Alipays are work fine, but sometimes some of these mini apps, like the China Dinosaurs mini app, needs to send you a verification code to authorize that you're actually a real person purchasing this front of the line pass. And it's kind of one of those things where like it's like a double verification, and then it allows you to put in a US number, but then it won't send it to a US number. It says like number doesn't exist. So it's really only designed, even though they have this built-in feature to select any country in the world, it's like 1 million country codes. Once you put in an extra phone number, it only recognizes a Chinese phone number. Now, we don't have an eSIM, but use American phone numbers. And I will say 90% of the time, we never run into issues. Now that Alipay and WeChat are so tourist-friendly, we don't have an issue. But this time, it really wasn't working. And so the staff member kept giving us like candy he got from park guests because he was like feeling so bad they were trying to figure it out. It was the most wholesome thing. And eventually, we pull cash out, and we're like, well, this is plan B. We're like, okay, man, like we have cash. Is there a way for us to give anyone cash that works here and then buy it that way? And first is like we had to ask someone like a park guest. Well, the park guests were like shocked by the price and walking away. So nobody was actually buying it. So then he calls one of the managers over, and then we paid the manager $300, 300 yuan, which is 150 person. That's about 43 USD for both of us to ride. Wasn't too bad. And then he walked us up to the exit. He bought it on like this shared phone they have in the station. It must happen more often because it was just a phone laying in the station. And then we gave him cash. And we did it again later on. But they seem really chill helping us out. We did a front seat ride and a back seat ride. Because we got to pick our seat pretty much, yeah.
Awesome.
And dispatches were so miserable. It was like once every 10 minutes.
15 minutes between dispatches.
At least. It was like
the most Chinese of Chinese operations.
I couldn't believe how bad it was. It was like, all right, so like a train unloads, grabs all their items, leaves the station, and then they start moving people into the station, and they get moved to a box, and all the belongings go into these little cubbies, and then they get seated, and then there's a double seatbelt situation, then it gets checked, then it gets checked again, and then eventually they dispatch the train, and then when it comes back, everyone leaves again, and the station's empty for a while, and then they start moving people into the station. Like same process, right? It takes very, very long. There was no other way for us to do it but to use this front of the line pass, because we waited in the line.
Probably a 3 hour wait. It said 2 hours, but it was
all the switchbacks are full. So I'm really glad we just showed up and then paid, and they helped us out with that. But man, what a beast! What an absolute beast! If you look at the shaping, we did an episode about this once. I mean, an article about this once years ago, describing the clear differences between X2 Ijunaika and Dinoconda. And Dinoconda is only a few feet shorter in height than Ijunaika, but it's all condensed. Every little element is like a really clear parabola. It's like a top hat instead of like an overbank. Like everything that this ride does is so compact. So every one of these little elements and these little flips, these little twists, just happens so much faster. It is just like out of control scary. Was I as petrified as the first time riding? No. But it was still crazy. I
just enjoyed my rides on it so much. Like really, because it's comfortable too. It's like more thrilling. It does more than X2, and it's also less painful. Like X2 really throttles you a lot, and it's easy to get caught up in the discomfort of the X2 experience to the point where it's hard to separate X2 and what it does as a ride versus like the discomfort of like it rattling its way through the layout. The Dinoconda, the what the layout does, what the ride does, the whole design element like really shines through because it just operates so much better. It's just compared
to Ijunaika has very similar elements. I guess the same sequence of events. It just has a couple of rotations slightly different, but some of the elements are very drawn out. The trains on Ijunaika are very short. The trains on Dinoconda are as long as X2's trains. So you have smaller, compacter, more parabolic elements with a longer train, meaning that like in the front end and the back end of the train, the elements are much more extreme because you really just get ragdolled through these. When you come out of that like zero-G thing that's happening like the second big or third big element, whether you're sitting in the front, you get launched into it, but in the back, you get like dragged out of it. And then you have that top hat that in the front, you get launched into the atmosphere. It's like you're just being launched into space and then you get dragged out.
Front seat, even though we were on the same side both times, the left side of the station, which that's like the good side anyway. But like if you're doing the fast pass, that's the side that it loads from. But yeah, front seat and back seat, totally different experiences.
Yeah, because the back, in that top hat, you get dragged out of it so extremely fast. Like, it just like you get dragged down to the ground.
Wild.
It's insane.
Just like being just dragged through the air. Oh my God. I can't say enough great things about this ride. This ride really is the real deal.
One thing I wish it did,
steel coaster for me.
That Ijunaika does to do that flip towards the brake run, like flip you forwards at the end.
Oh yeah, the face drag.
Instead, this brake run is very, very steeply angled, and it does almost like a drop into the brakes that's backwards, and the brakes don't start until the second half. And I remember liking it a lot last time, but I think this time I wish maybe it would have done like a flip forward like it did on Ijunaika. But either way, they're both so phenomenal. Yeah, this time we're expecting it. But yeah, there's no losing with Dinoconda. It's worth the money to get the front row or to get on without waiting. It is just such a spectacular ride, and every single time I ride one of these rides, even X2, I'm like, man, there's need to be more of these. Like, how do we neuter it down to the free spins, the SNS free spins? Like, they're fine, but man, there's just something about these massive coasters doing these inversions and aerial movements while the trains are flipping. Particularly that zero-G moment. Every single time I'm like flabbergasted by it. It's just so good. Makes me wish there was more of them.
But yeah, as far as China Dinosaur Park goes, that was it for our coaster riding experiences in the park for a couple of reasons. One, we decided not to ride. They have a Jinma spinning coaster with a barrel roll in it. And just based on our time constraints, we decided not to do that one.
We rode it
this time.
Yeah.
We rode it last time, obviously. And then we were going to ride Dinosaur Mountain, which is a Zamperla motorbike coaster, but it's not a launch coaster. It has a lift hill and a nice, unique layout. We were going to ride that one, but it closed for a couple of hours for daily maintenance. And then also the lady at the entrance was pointing at the height ceiling for the ride, the height max, and she was making it sound like we wouldn't be granted entry to ride it anyway. And I did
hear some other recently tall friends were not allowed on it. And since we rode it a couple times last time, because we actually made a point of riding it a couple times last time, because it is quite good. I'm just glad we got on it. But yeah, them closing it in the middle of the day for maintenance was such a trip. It's like, all right, great. Yeah. So like, it wasn't even a way for us to get on.
I think it's part of that afternoon ticket culture that these parks are starting to develop, because like there was several rides that closed for like between 3 and 5 p.m. And then at 5 p.m., everything is open again. And
until
the park
like
is open for another like 3 or 4 hours.
I will say, if we were staying in Changzhou, which we do like the city a lot, and it was for a little while, we were like Changzhou fans. It was just so fun. I would have been like, okay, great. Like, we'll just come back or stay at night and we'll do some night rides on Dinoconda, because that sounds magical, to be honest. It sounds great to do a night ride on Dinoconda. It just wasn't in the cards timing wise. And also, we're going to be up to go to Disney at like 5 a.m. the next day. And we had the only confirmed first class tickets back to Shanghai that evening. Sometimes you get serious and immersive to train tickets, because they do offer standing tickets, but I'm just not a fan of standing for an hour or 2 hours in a bullet train. Not for me.
But yeah, in all, it was a very successful day. We took pictures
100%.
and video of Dinoconda. We did the shoot and the museum, which were both new for us. We did a loop around the park, which was fun. We saw parts of the park that we didn't see on our previous visit.
The museum was awesome. Oh my God, the museum was so sick. Like, maybe because I hadn't done a lot of dinosaur bone stuff. Like, I'm not a dinosaur boy. Like, was never like a part of my childhood. I was like, oh, dinosaurs.
Yeah, me neither.
But so we went to the museum because it was open, and I would say the weather wasn't great. It was quite chilly. It was quite cold, and it was very overcasty and kind of wet. It wasn't raining, but it wasn't great. And so even the photos we took, like, my apologies in advance, are not even that good because the weather was just not great.
I think you look great. Yeah, I think you did a great job.
So we went into the museum, and man, maybe I'm like a newborn child, but like all those skeletons and all the fossils and stuff, I was like, oh my God, like it was so cool to see them. They have a really cool collection of them. There's quite a few dinosaurs there, and learning about them, where they were found, and some of the names were hilarious. They would be like scientific names in Latin, but the name of where they found the species would be in the name, so it would be like
the Shangdusaurus, or whatever,
or like the
Suchosaurus,
the Sichuanosaurus or something. Like, oh man, Sichuanosaurus.
We're like, you made that up. That's not fucking real.
And then we realized that like it was, the fossils were first discovered in Sichuan province, and therefore it's like Sichuanosaurus or something. And I was like, oh man,
Sichuanosaurus.
So it was like really cool, man. I really enjoyed that. That was like a highlight of the day. It was like the boat ride, Dinoconda, and then like the dinosaur fossil museum. So it's little things like that. Sometimes,
and that was it. That was what we did at the park with those 3 rides. We did obviously Dinoconda twice, and definitely took our time in the museum because it was so spectacular. Once we were inside, we were like, "Oh, let's take some time and walk through here," and then doing a lap around the park. We had a great visit. There wasn't anything else that there was like a dinosaur that they used to have a ride that was like an outdoor like Jurassic Park kind of Jeep thing.
That now was a walkthrough?
Seems like it had been converted into a walkthrough attraction because we saw people like in outfits, like guests, like you put on like you do like a LARPing type attraction.
Like in a jungle outfit. Yeah, whatever.
There was it was like, it didn't appear to be a ride anymore, is I guess what we're saying. They took a page from Shanghai Haichang Ocean Park and turned this ride into a walkthrough exhibit.
I will say, I wish if it wasn't a 90-minute wait time, I would have been like, let's just do it. Let's just find out what it's all about. But it was just not worth risking the time we had. It was not that much time left. But I will say,
it's amazing. Even with the fast passes for Dinoconda, it's still a time-consuming experience. The only thing there that we did that wasn't incredibly time-consuming was actually the shoot.
Well, trying to take photos of Dinoconda can take so much of your day because it dispatches so infrequently.
But yeah, it was just, I'm so glad we went. Oh my God.
This is a good highlight of like, sometimes with these parks, and I think it's coast enthusiasts, and I don't want to sort of criticism to coast enthusiasts, but sometimes we're so like laser focused on the coaster credits, and I get it, that's the passion, but a lot of these parks offer really cool attractions that are worth your time and are worth checking out. And like the Dinosaur Museum or the boat ride or the dark rides at the Fantawild parks, or even some of the more weird stuff like that tower ride at Suzhou. I think if you go to parks in China, it's really worth at most parks to at least check out some of the other attractions, because unlike regional parks in North America, where I feel like Six Flags parks, Cedar Fair parks, coasters are busts. If they do something else, it's kind of rare to do it, and it's usually not very good. But the Chinese parks, I think that they're all really well-rounded experiences. They almost all have a flying theater. They almost all have a dark ride or like a walkthrough or a museum. And I think it's worth your time. So, the approach to theme parks is a lot more varied. They all have a lot more of like a complete roster, I think. They're much more concept-y. Would you agree?
Yeah, I do. I think there's just some great extracurricular experiences. Like having a major oddball attraction rolled into your theme park is like a quintessential Chinese theme park experience, because you have like Chimelong Ocean Kingdom with the whale shark aquarium or like the dinosaur, fossil museum at China Dinosaur Park. That's just like having some other like oddball, like focal point attraction
that could be a standalone thing, is what you're saying?
Yeah, something that's so massive and substantial that like you could picture a place charging admission just for that. And so I think that's a great quality of a lot of Chinese parks. it rings true at a place like China Dinosaur Park. So, considering we had no intention of going to that park on this trip until like 12 hours before, I'm really glad that we went, and it ended up being an absolute highlight of the visit for me.
Yeah, I agree. I really enjoyed that we went back. It wasn't high on the list, but I'm glad we did it because Dinoconda is still one of my favorite coasters in the world. And this trip really, it was nice because it takes the pressure off of future trips. Okay, great. We did all the revisits already.
Mm-hmm.
And so now next time we don't even really have to go to Shanghai again. It's just kind of nice sometimes because you want to revisit parks, but there's so much new stuff out there to visit. But then just doing a week in Shanghai and chilling and going to parks in Jiangsu on a daily basis, like just doing like a day trips out there. It was a fun trip. You know, it was a good trip. Same hotel the whole time. It keeps things easy. So yeah, again, we did a lot of other parks in Shanghai. Check out that episode. And I think we're at a great stopping point. I think we managed to keep it to about an hour, and that's great.
At 65 minutes, which was the goal length for the other episode that ended up being 80 minutes. So this time we actually
and we spent about 20 minutes in each park, so it's great.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you guys so much for listening to Coaster Kings. Make sure to give us 5 stars if you're listening, Spotify, Apple Podcasts preferably, and we appreciate everything that you do. Follow us on social media, and we'll see you guys again with a new episode next week. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Bye.